This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday Lunchtime Show. Thanks for joining me. Today I'll be talking about artificial intelligence and English language teaching. I'll be giving an overview and looking at the latest developments, as well as talking about some of the concerns people have.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Sunday Lunchtime Show, everyone. I'm Graham Stanley, speaking to you live from Mexico City. As I mentioned earlier on today's show, I'll be talking about AI in ELT, English language teaching, and artificial intelligence. I should clarify that when I refer to AI during this program, I mean generative AI. In other words, chatbots, large language models such as ChatGPT and Google's Gemini, and image creators such as Midjourney and Night Cafe. There are now also Gen AI tools specifically aimed at educators, as listeners to my show with UK consultant Joe Dale will remember. On that show, Joe talked about his experience and knowledge of using AI for language learning, in particular modern foreign language learning and teaching. The difference between that show and this one is that I want to look at English language teaching specifically, and amongst other things, I'll be talking more about what the research says rather than practical tips for teachers. Though if we have time, I will speak a little bit about this too. In the show, I don't have a guest either, so if you're interested in contributing, then I'd love to hear from you. Go to ttr.org and join me live in the Podbean studio if you'd like to be part of the show. I'll be talking about this and more after the Teachers Talk Radio news.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Parentkind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school-parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour, and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents.
Are your teachers juggling multiple technology platforms and struggling to keep everything organised? Then Toddle might be the answer. Built by a team of ex-educators, Toddle offers an all-in-one solution for teachers that streamlines everything, from curriculum planning and assessments to communication and report cards. And the best part? Toddle comes inbuilt with an AI assistant that helps teachers save time and improve their practices. 85% of schools replaced 3 or more platforms when they brought in Toddle. Teachers using Toddle say that the platform helps them save up to 10 hours a week. That means more time for what really matters, supporting students and driving academic success. See how Toddle can support your school. Visit toddleapp.com.
Hey education changemakers, ready for something special? It's Bet Show's 40th anniversary and we're throwing a free celebration just for you. Join us at London Excel from January 22nd to 24th to connect, learn and be inspired. Picture this, 300 plus speakers who truly get it, 600 cutting-edge edtech companies and all the fresh ideas you need to make 2025 your best year yet. So why wait? Head to uk.betshow.com, grab your free ticket and come celebrate with your peers. Because this is for you. See you at Bet.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
FE Week reports that MPs have given Sir Ian Buckham the nod to continue as the chief regulator for Ofqual. Parliament's Education Committee today agreed that Sir Ian, the government's preferred candidate, was appointable to the post. The committee said it hopes he fulfills his commitment to serve a full term in office and restore much-needed stability to Ofqual. Sir Ian has been serving as interim chief regulator, but the approval means he could do the role permanently. Sir Ian told the committee that his roles in schools had provided him with a good understanding of the educational landscape and a deep appreciation of the value of qualifications. The previous experience includes leading a multi-academy trust and acting as chair of Oak National Academy. The BBC reports that striking teachers have held a rally outside the Leeds constituency office of Chancellor Rachel Reeves to demonstrate about pay. The group were joined by NEU General Secretary Daniel Kebede, following a government announcement in July that teachers would receive a 5.5% pay rise this year. The union has objected, as sixth form colleges without academy status have not been guaranteed funding to implement the award. The picket line in Bramley was held during the fourth one-day strike by staff at 32 colleges in England. Mr. Kebede said around 2,000 of the union's members were taking part in the latest walkouts. A Department for Education spokesperson said the government recognised the vital role played by sixth form colleges, but that they were responsible for setting appropriate pay for their workforce and managing their own industrial relations. The spokesperson also added that the autumn budget had provided an additional £300 million of revenue funding for further education, and it would set out in due course how it would be distributed. The Scotsman covers the story of the possible unravelling of a deal to replace 621 axed teachers, as several major local authorities declined to offer assurances over teacher numbers next year. In a joint statement, it was revealed that local government and the Scottish Government were committed to working together to restore teacher numbers to 2023 levels, and Education Secretary Jenny Gilruth said she would release £14.5 million to councils this year and increase it to £186.5 million next year to help deliver the pledge. However, some local authorities have failed to commit to the pledge to return to 2023 levels. Glasgow City Council cut 120 full-time equivalent teachers last year, but a spokesperson would only say, "We acknowledge that Glasgow's portion of last year's funding from the government has now been released. We continue to engage regarding next year's census figures." A spokesperson for Aberdeenshire Council also said, "Recruitment remains a significant challenge." In South Lanarkshire, the Director of Finance and Corporate Resources said, "The reduction in numbers is a result of the return to core numbers following short-term increases as part of the response to the pandemic." The Scottish National Party pledged in 2021 that it would recruit an additional 3,500 teachers. But since then, the number of full-time equivalent staff has fallen by 873. Full details of the numbers and further comment can be found in the Scotsman online. Finally, the Times of India reports that amid tightening visa policies in traditional destinations like the US, UK, Canada and Australia, Indian students are turning to European countries like Germany, France and Ireland for higher education. Sources report a 40% decline in interest in the conventional destinations, citing easier visa processes, more affordable education, and lower living costs as key reasons for the shift. Germany has become a top choice due to a streamlined visa process and 18-month post-graduation job-seeking visas. Most students are going for courses like engineering, computer science and management, whilst in France, popular courses include arts, history and fashion, with a 2-year post-study work visa extended to 5 years for master's degree holders. In Ireland, graduates can also stay for 2 years post-study. Further details on this story can be found in the Times of India online. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Welcome back, everyone. As I mentioned before the news, today I'll be trying to give an overview on ELT and AI. If there's one area of technology that has dominated English language teaching this year, it's got to be AI. Anyone who has attended a conference can attest to the impact that artificial intelligence has started to have on our profession. And it's also been a year when major steps have been taken to educate teachers on the potential of AI on the teaching and learning of English. Highlights for me include Vicky Salmel's plenary on artificial intelligence at the IATEFL conference in Brighton in March, where Vicky shared information and concerns about the environmental impact of these emerging tools, among other things. Another milestone for me was the much needed and valuable publication by the British Council of an overview of the research that has been carried out in the field, which you can download from the Teaching English website. And then there are courses and communities of practice that have been set up by including experts in the field such as Nick Peachy and Joe Dale, where teachers have been sharing their experience of using the tools and updating each other on other aspects of practice. For teaching and learning, it's great to hear from teachers from around the world about how they're using these tools. And also the discussions that appear on those forums are really interesting as well. And this has been particularly valuable. And apart from this, there are other experts such as Gavin Dudney who have been raising warnings about the bias that is inherent in the tools and that we need to be careful about embracing AI because of its tendency for bias and for hallucinating. All of these things are very important. If any teacher is going to be using generative AI tools, then this needs to be taken into account. On today's show, I'm going to draw upon all of this and more to try and give what I hope will be a useful overview of developments that have happened this year. And then, as I mentioned, if I have time, I'll try to summarize how teachers have been using Gen AI in the class with learners. But to begin with, let me try to give an overview of the key themes and insights when it comes to English language teaching and AI. And as Chris is saying in the chat, Chris Fry, hi Chris, what is relevant to ELT is equally relevant to MFL, which is true. But I'll be looking at research which has been done specifically on English language teaching and doesn't include MFL, I think, in the reports at least that I talked about before. So, what are the affordances of AI in English language teaching and learning? So the studies show a growing focus on the potential benefits of AI in enhancing various aspects of using the tools with learners or in the classroom. This includes, for example, when it comes to speaking, well, AI tools can support pronunciation practice, conversational interaction through voice assistants and chatbots is happening, and speech recognition for assessment as well. And Crompton in the 2024 report talks about the among the AI pedagogical methods for teaching speaking, it was used as a conversational partner and language coach. And I think this is one of the interesting developments that perhaps a year ago we didn't have access to, as I remember it. When it comes to writing, AI can assist in grammar and vocabulary learning and provides real-time corrective feedback and translation support, which is very exciting. And reading, AI-powered gaming environments, for example, in particular, can enhance vocabulary acquisition and comprehension through contextualized learning. One of the things I find really exciting that I've played with AI for is this idea of using it to do branching, this kind of branching path reading. So you give it a prompt and it will set the instructions for a game and what happens in that game. So a bit like a interactive reading. where the chatbot is actually providing the scenario and the choices, and then you, as the reader, makes a decision of what to do, and it will reward or punish you for your decisions. That's quite an interesting way of providing interesting scenario-based reading for students. As far as pedagogy is concerned, what has been shown is that AI can personalize learning. It can provide adaptive learning experiences and offer opportunities for learner-generated contexts. Then AI can also support learners in setting goals and monitoring progress and developing learning independence. What about the challenges? Well, the challenges of AI and English language teaching and learning include significant concerns regarding the limitations and the potential negative impacts of AI, such as technology breakdowns. Obviously, connectivity issues and program failures can disrupt learning, but that can happen with any type of technology. We have to be aware as teachers of the limited capabilities. Current AI systems may not be advanced enough to address complex language or provide natural interactions. As Crompton says in the report, again, AI can only mimic text and expressions, and this may not always be correct from the data it has been trained on. And it could also be that the AI program is not advanced enough to mimic accurately. There's also fear and concerns about data privacy, AI bias, as I mentioned before, and the potential for AI to standardize language use, and learners becoming overly reliant on AI would not be a good thing, of course. I mean, they're not learning the language, I hope, to talk to machines. They're learning the language to talk to other people. There are also gaps in the research and teacher training. There's the need for more research on the effective use of AI in diverse English language teaching and learning contexts, as well as training teachers on how to effectively integrate artificial intelligence into their classrooms. And that is emphasized by all of the research studies that I've certainly looked at. Let's look at some important ideas that have come from some of these reports. The research on AI and English language teaching and learning is predominantly concentrated in Asia and particularly in China. The learning levels, a significant proportion of the studies focus on higher education, which isn't surprising, given that most of the researchers work in a higher education context. There's certainly less research on AI applications in schools and even for adult English language teaching and learning. And Chris, again, in the chat here, is mentioning that data privacy and age limits make many ideas impossible with younger learners, of course, which is definitely a consideration. It's a lot harder to do research and to try out AI in the classroom, even if as a teacher, if you have those restrictions, which exist for very good reasons, of course, but if you need parental permission to be able to use these tools, then that gives an extra barrier, if you like, before you can actually do any studies. The ethical considerations, the implications of using AI in ELT and learning include data privacy. As I mentioned, the transparency in AI systems is not always clear, and the need for human oversight. And these are crucial areas for discussion and policy development. And again, Crompton, in the study this year, said policies that avoid the many benefits of these tools with English learners, and only studies published in English were included in the study that was produced there. Examination of further databases may provide further data. I mentioned just before the need for teacher training. it's really important that teachers are equipped with the knowledge and skills to critically evaluate and effectively utilize these AI tools. And that is repeatedly highlighted in the research that I've certainly looked at. And then a deeper investigation of the effectiveness of these AI tools in supporting specific language skills across different learner demographics and contexts is needed. What is great to see is that there has been an explosion in research, and there's going to be a lot more evidence in the coming years about how best these tools can be used. But of course, the research lags behind because there are new tools coming out every month, every week, it seems sometimes. And one of the things that is very difficult to do is to keep up with all of the developments in this area. And again, I think one of the things as a teacher who is interested in this, the best thing you can do is to join one of these communities of practice of other teachers, and that will give you leads as to the kind of things other teachers are being are using with their learners, what they're looking at, and ideas that you can follow up, because it's impossible to try out all the tools on your own for anyone, even if you are doing this full time, I think. What is needed is the examination of the long-term impact of AI on language learning motivation. That will come, of course. Also for learner autonomy and the development of critical thinking skills. The development of best practices and ethical guidelines, I think, is of pressing nature for the responsible implementation of AI in English language teaching and learning, and the exploration of the potential role of AI in addressing global challenges related to language education, such as providing access to quality learning resources for underserved populations. So in conclusion, I think of this roundup of the research, etc., AI seems to present both exciting possibilities and significant challenges for the future of ELT. And while AI has the potential to enhance learning experiences and personalize instruction, there is this need to consider very carefully things like ethical issues, potential biases, and the ongoing research and teacher training needed to better understand this area is crucial. Collaboration between educators, researchers, and policymakers, I think, is also very important so that the power of AI can be harnessed for the benefit of language learners. And more information from the chat. The speed of innovation of Gen AI makes it very difficult to train teachers and adopt new tools for a school or country, is what Chris is mentioning here. Yes, definitely, Chris. And the danger of learners becoming over-reliant on Gen AI is the other side of the coin of the need to prepare learners for a world in which Gen AI is ubiquitous. Definitely. I think that is so important, isn't it, Chris? It's the idea that it isn't something that's going to go away. It's not something that a teacher can afford to ignore with their learners. The whole idea of us being, having the responsibility to prepare learners for the real world, and AI is definitely being used out there in the real world. So we'll be doing a disservice to learners if we're just banning these tools and totally ignoring them. They're going to be ill-equipped to deal with what they will find when they go to the world of work, for example. And another good point Chris is making in the chat is that biases are present everywhere. It's not a problem that is exclusive to Gen AI, which is definitely worth thinking about. But I think the important thing here is that if you are using these tools, you have to be critical when it comes to how you use them, and understand that the output that the tools are producing needs to be looked at with a skeptical eye. You need to have a look at this and understand that some of what you see that these tools are producing may well not be true, and it does require some kind of examination of the content to make sure that they're not skewing the world as it actually is. So that's the overview. Now let's look at what I'd like to do now is look in more detail at some of the issues that we've already started talking about, beginning with ethical concerns. So I think the introduction of AI in English language teaching presents a range of ethical challenges that educators, policymakers, and developers need to consider. One of the key concerns, of course, and this comes out in the existing research studies, etc., is the potential for bias in AI systems that we have been talking a little bit about. Why does this happen? Well, they're trained on large data sets, especially I'm talking about not only the large language models, but also the image tools that we find as well. And they may reflect existing societal biases. And if these biases are not addressed, then there is a fear that AI could perpetuate inequalities. When it comes to the classroom, for example, it could favor certain accents or dialects over others, and this could lead to the exclusion of certain groups of learners and reinforce existing power imbalances. So that's something to be aware of. AI systems are also capable of collecting vast amounts of data on learners, and this raises concerns about data privacy and security. So if you are using these tools and you're inputting data, then you do need to look at the privacy policy and ensure that the data is not being used. One of the tools that Chris mentioned in the chat, for example, was Google's Notebook LM, which is a fascinating tool which actually takes data that you produce, only the data that you input, and it then allows you to interrogate it, analyze it in detail, and it will even produce a kind of 10 to 15 minute podcast on the information that you produce. One of the things that is it's comforting, if you like, about this tool, which I did worry about when I first started looking about it, is that Google have stated in their policies that they won't use these the data that you upload for anything other than the purposes that you have specified. So it won't use it publicly to train their large language models, which is the kind of concern that you have if you're in particular uploading data which could be personal or private, or for example, if you were using data produced by other people which would be difficult, impossible to get permission to use, for example. And Chris again said that one of the new things about that tool is that you can interrupt the podcast that it produces and intervene, and you when you do that, you need to record the adapted conversation on another device, but you can actually ask questions to the AI presenters that are producing a kind of radio show type interview format about whatever content you're uploading. It's fascinating. It's really interesting. And I did wonder whether to do one for today's show, but I didn't have time to actually to do it. But perhaps in a future show I will do that. So AI systems also provide another ethical challenge, and that's the potential for over-reliance on AI. We don't want to become so enthusiastic about these tools that and use them with our students that they become too dependent on AI for tasks, in particular such as writing. they may not develop the critical thinking skills and creativity that are essential for effective language learning if we do that. And I think there is this idea that we can introducing these tools to students, for example, the students can think, well, okay, I can just use these tools to actually produce my writing and I don't have to learn about how to write well. But I think that would be doing a disservice to the students, of course. There is also a risk in the literature that I read that AI could de-skill teachers. Of course, this is one of the biggest fears that teachers have had with the emergence of these tools. What happens to teaching if these tools can replace or augment some of the things that teachers have done? Could they actually be seen as a replacement for human interaction and instruction? Will these tools actually be a replacement for teachers in the future? I personally think this isn't the case. What I've seen is that teachers and other professions who adopt these tools, they are almost like teaching assistants, I think. And also in other professions, people are starting to realize that you actually do need to understand teaching and learning before you can actually use these tools effectively. So you can guide learners on how to best use these tools, for example, for learning on their own, for practicing language, for helping them to write. But you do have to look at the content that they produce, for example, when it comes to writing, with a critical eye, as I said before. It's the same with programming. You can use these tools to do a lot of coding, for example, and I have a friend who is a coder who does now use this a lot of these AI tools more than was done before, of course. But he still needs to check the code. He needs to be able to understand what is happening and be able to correct errors, etc. So it isn't that someone without his experience and knowledge of computer programming and computer science can actually just start using these tools and not use a programmer or coder. You do have to have that background knowledge. And I think the same is true of language teaching. You can't, it's not a replacement for a teacher, for example. I think there are also a lot of concerns about the potential for academic misconduct. So this area, which we can call plagiarism, is of great concern, although because these large language tools are not actually producing content that is directly copied from other works, it's not really plagiarism, or this has definitely been argued. They're learning from all of these texts, and AI can be used to generate text that is difficult to distinguish from human written text. And what I've seen is that it's very difficult to find an AI checker that is very accurate. I don't think they're particularly useful, at least the ones that I've seen. And sometimes the reverse can happen. A student, for example, can write a text on their own and the AI checker calls it AI generated or gives a high probability that it was AI generated, which is not very useful or fair, I think. But the use of these AI tools does raise questions about the authenticities of student work and the role of assessment in AI-powered learning environments. And I think this is the biggest challenge, it seems, to the role of assessment, for example, is to rethink assessment. Can we produce or give students assessment exercises, work that is very difficult for AI to actually answer? Either it needs to be personal, or it needs to be current, or some kind of assessment that requires very obvious student engagement with it. With language teaching and learning, it's very easy. We can actually get the students to produce something that is audio or video in their own, using their own voice and their own. So it's clear that this is actually happening. In addition to these specific challenges, there is a broader concern about the need for ethical guidelines and frameworks for the use of artificial intelligence and ELT. And it is said that these guidelines should address issues such as data privacy, bias, and accountability. And there is a need to ensure that AI is used in a way that benefits all learners. There's also a need for teacher training, as I mentioned before, particularly on the ethical implications of AI and how to use it responsibly in the classroom. I think this is the area which is of most concern. The idea of taking these tools and just using them to save time has become very prominent. I think I've seen definitely a shift away from concerns about students using these tools to respond to homework, for example, or assignments, towards a greater interest on how these AI tools can actually save teachers time when it comes to producing lesson plans or producing assessment rubrics, etc. But I definitely think there is this danger that a teacher uses ChatGPT, for example, to produce a test or some kind of homework assignment and rubrics, gives it to the students. The students use the same tool to produce the answers. The teacher takes in the answers, puts it through the AI chatbot to respond and critique, and gives it back to the students without any human intervention whatsoever in the whole cycle. And that may sound ridiculous, but it is potential now to do that. And I'd be a bit worried that no human being is actually benefiting from this type of interaction. Now, despite the high usage of AI tools in English language teaching, and it does seem like more teachers are using them, many teachers have not received, so it seems, adequate training on how to incorporate them effectively. Which is not surprising, really, but it is very worrying. So addressing these ethical issues, ethical challenges, is crucial to ensure that AI is used responsibly and effectively in English language teaching. And a lot of the people involved in writing about this and thinking about this seem to suggest that taking a human-centered approach and prioritizing the needs of the learners and teachers is the way forward to be able to harness the power of AI to create more inclusive and equitable learning experiences for all. Right, let's look at in more detail of about the two major concerns when it comes to using Gen AI in education. But first, I see there's a lot of activity in the chat, so I'm going to have a quick look at what is being said there. So, Faxed Porcupine Podcast talks about how a lot of the teachers in school are very much clearing up on the academic achievement of tests based on the quality of writing and knowing their students, so that they know that the work has not been done physically. Yeah, so I think what's being said there is that teachers becoming more familiar with these Gen AI tools can definitely spot when they have been used by students. Sometimes it's very obvious, but I think it's quite interesting. If I look at the first time I was at a conference when someone put up on the screen some human written text and asked us to compare them with AI generated text, we had difficulty in identifying which was written by the human and which was written by the AI. Then the second and third time I saw this done, because it's a very popular activity for anyone presenting on ChatGPT, for example, it became a lot easier. And I found I was able to spot the AI generated text very easily. And that was quite interesting and comforting for me, I think. So I think definitely it's another reason why teachers should become familiar with these tools, because the more familiar with these tools, the more you see how they write. They have their own writing style. Even if students were able, some of them I think will be, to try and change the way that the style of these tools writing, you'll be able to spot, I would say, in the majority of cases, when or have an idea of when students have been using these tools for writing. And Chris says that if an Moloch suggests you ask Gen AI to create many more items than you actually need, so that you, the teacher, can use your expertise to select and use the best ones. And yeah, I think one of the things I think as a language teacher is really interesting is that you can very quickly get large amounts of text generated by these AI tools, and you can do variations of them. You can accept the content that is produced, you can reject it, you could take several of these texts and put them together. You can actually get the tools to vary the complexity of the text so that you can target specific types of learners. This wasn't possible previously. It was very difficult. You'd have to actually take just the texts that were provided in the course books or from the internet and try to simplify them, and this would be very time consuming. So I think one of the things I think is really interesting when it comes to reading is this idea of you can very quickly provide texts that are of interest, local interest or specific interest to groups of learners, that they're interested in particular subjects, for example, and provide these texts for them to use. Okay, so let's look at these two major concerns when it comes to using Gen AI in education in more detail, and this is bias and hallucinations. So bias in AI, again, we started talking a little bit about that. All systems can exhibit bias due to the data that they're trained on. It's like human bias, as Chris has mentioned in the chat. And AI systems can exhibit this bias. It's especially concerning in English language teaching, as AI could perpetuate existing biases related to a number of different things. For example, standard language ideologies. AI might promote a standardized form of English, disadvantaging learners who speak other varieties of English. For example, one study found that Google Translate did not recognize Tagalog in the Philippines as its distinct language, offering only Filipino as an option. This reinforces the dominance of Filipino as a standardized language of the Philippines, and it potentially marginalizes speakers of Tagalog. So when it comes to this type of thing, these models are learning from the data that it's been provided. And if the data that has been provided already has bias in it, which is likely, or the number of studies, for example, on a particular area favors one aspect over another, then this could be worrying. It's difficult to understand how that might change, but I do believe that this is something that is being looked at. Cultural and social groups. The AI models could reflect the biases present in the vast amounts of online text and images that they're trained on. And there have been a lot of examples of people, for example, looking in communities of practice that I've seen definitely that specify that are concentrated on looking at the kind of images that artificial intelligence produce, and they ask for example, a typical Mexico City street, for example, and get a lot of stereotypical images back. And this is a bit worrying, really. If not carefully designed and monitored, these tools could produce outputs that are culturally insensitive, discriminatory, or perpetuate harmful stereotypes as well. And I think one of the other things that comes out in the research is this idea of native speaker pronunciation. Chatbots and other speech recognition tools often privilege native speaker pronunciation, which potentially disadvantages learners who speak English as an additional language. And this, of course, can lead to students developing a narrow view of English, seeing it as a subject to be mastered rather than a language in flux. So as a teacher, you have to be careful about what kind of, if you're using, for example, the text-to-speech tools, or, for example, the podcast that I mentioned before, that Chris was talking about, the Notebook LM tool that produces an automatic podcast. At the moment, it just produces a podcast that has two accents, male and a female, talking with American accents. I'm hoping and assuming that this will change in the future, as a lot of the text-to-speech tools have now adopted all sorts of different accents from around the world, which makes it a lot easier to produce models if you are going to use this type of tool in the classroom that reflect the diverse world we live in. So it's crucial to address these biases, I think, to ensure that AI tools are inclusive and equitable for all learners. Now, hallucination. Chris Fry in the chat is talking about hallucination not being a problem when the output is not critical, which is often the case in English language teaching. It depends on the kind of text that you're asking the tools to produce. If you're just providing them as language models, then it's not as important, as Chris is saying, than if you are training airline pilots or brain surgeons. Or even, I think, if you're a subject teacher and using these tools, you need to have that knowledge of the subject before you present the text that the AI tools are producing in the classroom, because you wouldn't want to be giving facts to students that are definitely not true. So that is where it comes to hallucinations. I should say, of course, that AI hallucinations, this refers to instances where AI generates false information and presents it convincingly as the truth. It can be problematic in English language teaching, as learners may not have the skills to discern fact from fiction. It is also true that if a teacher is asking for a text that they are using in class that is outside their knowledge area, for example, it could be that a teacher is producing a text that relates to biology, and they're not aware so much about the details or the veracity of the text that is being produced. That can be problematic. It could also lead to misinformation and a lack of trust in AI, which we should, I think, have that at the back of our mind, that we can't assume that this is an answer that is factually correct. We need to be able to have the ability to check it. One of the things I think is really encouraging is a lot of these Gen AI tools now are producing references to where they got the information for, so teachers can actually check on that, which is great to see. But several factors can contribute to AI hallucinations. One of them is the limitation in training data. So the AI models can only generate output based on the data they've been trained on. When it comes to the tool that I mentioned before, the Notebook LM, where you're producing the data that it's using, that's something you need to take into account, particularly if you're looking at studies of an academic nature and trying to make assumptions about a particular area. Then you need to give enough data, or the relevant data, for the AI to be able to respond to it. If not, then you probably could not rely upon it. If the data is incomplete or biased, the AI may produce inaccurate or misleading information. Another area when it comes to AI hallucinations is the complexity of language. So language is inherently ambiguous and nuanced, and this makes it challenges for AI systems to fully grasp the complexities. And this can lead to misinterpretations and errors in output. This is one of the things that I think is interesting, because it's why what I was mentioning before, you can start, when you start using these AI chatbots a lot, you start seeing the same kind of output, the same kind of tone or style, if you like, in the output. And I think it's a kind of neutral, generic output that is necessary for the AI to produce, because it's very difficult for AI to be able to produce language that is more complex or nuanced. There is, of course, a lack of real-world understanding. Current AI systems, despite being very impressive, lack a genuine understanding of the real world. And I think this is something that isn't going to go away. We can't assume that AIs will understand the real world, because they don't. They kind of don't live, if you like, in the real world. This can lead in some instances to nonsensical or factually incorrect outputs, especially when dealing with complex or unfamiliar concepts. How do you mitigate these concerns? Well, it's essential to develop learners' critical thinking skills. Learners need to be taught how to evaluate information critically, especially when using AI-powered tools. And I think this is an essential role that the teacher, whether it be an English teacher or any other teacher, needs to have if you're going to introduce these tools to learners. And I think you should, then I do believe that you need to put this as a priority to be able to critically evaluate the information that the tools produced. And this includes recognizing the potential for bias, of course, and hallucinations. So those are the two areas that you do need to introduce the students to. And perhaps you can actually deliberately force the AI tool to produce something that is either stereotyped and or is incorrect. Produce it and give it to the students, and make that the basis for teaching them or making them aware of, or getting them to understand or think about the content, and talk then about bias and hallucinations, so they can use these AI tools responsibly and ethically. Transparency and accountability. It's important for anyone involved in this to try and put pressure on the AI developers to be transparent about the data they use to train their models, and take responsibility for addressing issues of bias and hallucinations. So I think a lot of the posts on social media calling out when a tool is particularly has particular bias or hallucinating, these are definitely, I think, being monitored by the developers, and I hope the developers are then addressing them. I think the role of government in forcing these developers to actually be accountable is important, and I see that is starting to happen more and more. And then the lawsuits that some of the people involved, artists, writers, etc., that are doing, is definitely having an impact on how the developers, their attitude towards content which has copyright, for example. I'm in two minds about this. I don't really know how I feel about taking content that is publicly available. I don't think we should worry about that. I think human beings do that as well. We read things and change our viewpoints based on that. And again, Chris is saying it's important to train learners in the best ways to use Gen AI to help them learn rather than help them with the homework. Exactly. It can't be output produced, can it? Output focused, can it, Chris? I think we need to talk to learners about what they need, not just to. It's a bit like when we shouldn't teach to learners to pass an exam. We should teach them how to develop as language learners and how to improve, rather than focusing on the actual thing that is meant to evaluate that. There's a danger, of course, of just as there's a danger, of course, of teaching to the test. There's a danger of using these tools in a way that is not particularly critical, for example. So, one thing that has become a hot topic this year, and I mentioned it in the beginning, was this idea of the concern about AI and its impact on resources and the environment. And this is a major concern, that AI has potentially an impact on the environment, particularly its significant energy consumption and contribution to carbon emissions. And I think the first time that was sort of highlighted, at least for me, as a major, major concern was, as I mentioned before, when Vicky Selmel spoke about it at the IATEFL conference. And I think the audience, I was physically in the audience, and there was this engagement with what she was saying, and this kind of, this is the big problem when it comes to AI use. Collectively, we all, I think, or most of the people in that room, plus the people who are listening and watching online, suddenly started considering what this tool was that it appeared that was very attractive to us from a language learning and teaching point of view. There was suddenly this idea of, well, actually, we need to really think twice about how often we use these tools. The training and operation of these large AI models, like those used in language processing, they demand substantial computational resources, and this does lead to high energy consumption. It's particularly concerning as the field of AI continues to advance. It requires increasingly complex models and larger data sets, and this, of course, drives up the energy demands. Additionally, the production and disposal of the hardware necessary for AI infrastructure contributes to environmental concerns. As time goes on, the demand on the hardware becomes more and more, and this requires more and different hardware. However, the sources do suggest, the ones that I've seen, that this challenge could motivate the adoption of greener energy sources, potentially driving a shift towards sustainable energy, which let's hope that happens. The potential for AI to exacerbate the digital divide, that's also of an environmental concern. The unequal adoption of AI across different regions could lead to a concentration of energy intensive AI infrastructure in specific areas, and this could place a strain on resources and contribute to environmental degradation. Yeah, despite these challenges, AI also holds potential for environmental benefit, which I think is worth talking about. It can be used to monitor and curb deforestation, predict environmental impact, and accelerate the development of green technologies. So it's not all bad news. For example, AI software is being used to optimize train operations, which could potentially lead to significant reductions in fuel consumption and carbon emissions. This is still of concern, though, and addressing the environmental impact of artificial intelligence requires a multifaceted approach, which includes developing more energy efficient AI algorithms and hardware, transitioning to renewable energy sources for AI infrastructure, and promoting responsible AI development and deployment practices. And this means we need to consider environmental sustainability, invest in more research and development of AI solutions for environmental challenges. And ultimately, the successful and sustainable development of AI requires a balanced approach. I think it's clear from what I've read that it considers both its potential benefits and the risks to the environment. I have here also notes about some of the concerns when it comes to the digital divide, which I've talked about briefly. The major concern is that AI could further disadvantage learners who already lack access to technology and the internet, because this AI-powered learning tools require reliable connectivity and devices, and these are not equally available to all learners, of course. It's very especially pronounced in the global south and rural areas where access to technology and digital literacy can be very limited. This means that learners without access could miss out on the potential benefits of AI, further widening the gap in learning opportunities. So, this is of particular concern. I think one of the significant limitations that has emerged from the research is the potential for AI to standardize language use, potentially excluding certain groups or dialects. I mentioned that before. When AI models are trained on limited data sets, this may not reflect the diversity of English spoken globally, and can lead to a situation where some learners' speech or writing is flagged as incorrect, for example, simply because it deviates from the standard used to train the AI. And as one expert in the research has noted, this is particularly problematic with generative AI, where the explainability problem makes it difficult to challenge the AI's output, even if it is based on biased or incomplete data. Fear has also been identified as a challenge for learners using AI. This can stem from a lack of understanding about how these systems work, concerns about data privacy, or anxiety about interacting with machines. It's important to address these fears by providing clear information about how AI is being used, and make sure that, the developers, if they make sure that the systems are designed in a way that is user-friendly and transparent. And other limitations of AI include, as I mentioned before, the over-reliance on it, which can lead to reduced critical thinking skills and creativity, the potential for academic misconduct that leads to, I'm going to put this in inverted commas, but concerns such as plagiarism, and concerns about the quality of the content produced by the AI, and difficulties of integrating AI into teaching practice due to a lack of training and support for teachers. So it is important, I think, for researchers and practitioners to continue investigating these limitations and to develop strategies for mitigating the risks associated with AI in English language teaching and learning. But especially as the AI technology continues to evolve, it's critical and crucial. It's crucial to approach the implementation in AI with a critical and cautious perspective to ensure that it complements and enhances the human teaching rather than replacing it or undermining it.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Parentkind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By By fostering strong school-parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour, and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents.
Are your teachers juggling multiple technology platforms and struggling to keep everything organised? Then Toddle might be the answer. Built by a team of ex-educators, Toddle offers an all-in-one solution for teachers that streamlines everything, from curriculum planning and assessments to communication and report cards. And the best part? Toddle comes inbuilt with an AI assistant that helps teachers save time and improve their practices. 85% of schools replaced 3 or more platforms when they brought in Toddle. Teachers using Toddle say that the platform helps them save up to 10 hours a week. That means more time for what really matters, supporting students and driving academic success. See how Toddle can support your school. Visit toddleapp.com.
Hey education changemakers, ready for something special? It's Bet Show's 40th anniversary and we're throwing a free celebration just for you. Join us at London Excel from January 22nd to 24th to connect, learn and be inspired. Picture this, 300 plus speakers who truly get it, 600 cutting-edge edtech companies and all the fresh ideas you need to make 2025 your best year yet. So why wait? Head to uk.betshow.com, grab your free ticket and come celebrate with your peers. Because this is for you. See you at Bet.
So after examining the concerns in detail, I would like to look at some of the things that AI can help with as far as ELT is concerned. And the first of these is differentiation. So I think AI can play a significant role in supporting differentiation in English language teaching and can enable learners to cater to the diverse needs of their learners. And here's how. Personalized learning pathways. AI-powered learning platforms, they can help provide individual learning pathways based on the learner's proficiency levels, learning styles, and areas for improvement. And a lot of these platforms use adaptive algorithms to adjust the content-based activities that can meet specific needs. There's also, of course, accessible learning resources. AI can be used to create more accessible learning resources for learners with disabilities, for example. Speech-to-text and text-to-speech tools in particular can support learners with visual impairments or dyslexia, while AI-powered translation tools can also assist learners with different language backgrounds. So I think there's a lot here to be interested in when it comes to differentiation. You can also give tailored feedback and support through these tools. They can offer very detailed and targeted feedback on the learner's performance, highlighting areas for improvement and suggesting specific strategies for development. Quite often, I think teachers don't do this because they just don't have the time to give very specific feedback in a lot of cases. So this personalized feedback that the AI tools can produce with, for example, text, as long as you look at their output critically, I think, which is very important, it can help learners focus more particularly on their individual learning needs. And this is getting better. Again, Chris Fry in the chat here is saying that sometimes the spoken interaction with tools such as Copilot or PI.ai, it's so realistic that you can imagine some people getting addicted to their invisible friend, which is interesting to hear, Chris. Thanks. Keep the comments coming. It's really interesting to hear your experience of using these tools. Adaptive learning activities is an important area. AI can generate a variety of activities and materials which are tailored to different learning preferences that students may have. This could include creating interactive exercises, providing real-time feedback on pronunciation, and suggesting vocabulary based on individual needs. So all of this is really interesting. Another thing that I've just touched upon is personalization. It's an interesting area where Gen AI is definitely being used to great effect. AI can be used to personalize learning. It can be used to allow teachers to tailor lessons to individual students, which teachers would not have had the time to do that, or will not have the time to do that all on their own. This can lead to more effective learning. It can be used to automate tasks such as grading, we mentioned before, feedback, and lesson planning, which can give teachers more time to focus on the actual teaching, on the actual students. So it can be a great time saver, I think, for teachers, and many teachers, if not the majority of them, using AI. This is why they're using it, I think. There are concerns about this, of course. As I mentioned before, it can reinforce standardized language use, exclude certain groups or varieties of English. It can worsen the digital divides if it is widely adopted and not critically adopted. So this is of concern. Despite these concerns, though, there is a general consensus that AI has the potential to revolutionize the teaching and learning of English. And in the global survey of 1,348 English language teachers that the British Council conducted, it was found that 76% report using AI-powered tools now, though only 20% report having had enough training in how to incorporate them into the teaching. So this is one of the big concerns. It also, the survey also found that teachers feel that AI benefits the development of all 4 English language skills fairly equally, which is quite interesting. And teachers are also using AI for a range of tasks, which include creating materials, helping learners practice on their own using English, creating lesson plans, and correcting learners' English. So it's clear that AI is already having a major impact on English language teaching and learning, and this is only likely to grow in the coming years. It is important, however, to be aware of the risks that I mentioned as well as the benefits. But I think what I'd like to do to finish today is to look at some of the ideas of how a number of communities of practices, including teachers, have been sharing how they're using these tools, and also some of the ideas that are appearing in published books or aimed at teachers' handbooks, for example, or of the like that was written by Nick Peachy recently and is available to download on the British Council Teaching English website. Things like that show how teachers are using it or how teachers can use it. And the research shows that the teachers, as well as the research studies, they are focusing on artificial intelligence predominantly for productive skills, speaking and writing, more than receptive skills of listening and reading at the moment. This trend has been observed in the systematic reviews since 2021. And a reason potentially for this focus is that its natural language processing capabilities are particularly well suited to supporting the development of speaking and writing. So when it comes to speaking, studies focusing on the use of AI for speaking skills development center particularly on pronunciation. AI-powered systems can provide learners with immediate feedback on their pronunciation and visual representation of their speech. And then, of course, predating this explosion of Gen AI, we have the use of personal voice assistants, which a lot of the research was focusing on tools such as Alexa as conversational partners for speaking practice. In the area of writing, their particular focus was on vocabulary learning and grammar, and AI-powered tools can assist with vocabulary acquisition, especially for specialized or technical terms. And also there are, of course, again, predating Gen AI, grammar checkers such as Grammarly, which are widely used, and they're also studied for their ability to provide feedback on grammar. When it comes to receptive skills, there is less research, less studies, Then on predictive skills, as I said before, vocabulary was the major aspect of reading that emerged as a significant focus in the research. AI-powered games is definitely emerged as a potential tool for promoting vocabulary learning, and studies on listening skills are even more limited. Chris in the chat, Chris Fry, is saying the idea of creating easier versions of course book materials to use as a build up to the original material works to provide help for everyone little by little. So this is interesting. It's similar to what I was saying before. Producing kind of texts in particular is become really easy. But of course, Chris said producing easier versions of the course book materials is a copyright minefield. And he says, as long as you don't share these simplified versions with other teachers, should be all right, I think. I'm not sure about that, Chris, but I'll leave it there. But I think one of the things I think is quite interesting is that you can use these tools to provide different texts that are perhaps more personalized for the group of learners that you're using, that perhaps covers the same grammar, vocabulary that you want to use, which is true. Now, what about the actual details of the skills work and what teachers can do? I'm running out of time, but I would like to talk a little bit about that. I'm just looking through my notes here to find something relevant. So here we have it. Let's start with speaking. So teachers are using AI in various ways to help learners practice speaking in English classes. And I know you, Chris, who is been sharing lots of information in the chat, in particular, has been using these tools with students. And so I look forward to see what you can add to what I'm about to say, Chris. It would be good to complement what I have as my notes for this. So a key application in using AI for pronunciation practice is through this speech recognition software. And this type of software can transcribe and assess spoken language. It gives learners real-time feedback on the pronunciation and helps them improve their fluency. One teacher in one of the studies here described using speech recognition software to enhance pronunciation practice and language comprehension tests. And the software that the teacher used provided students with immediate feedback, allowing them to refine their speaking skills and gain confidence. So this is happening, and you see it in the communities of practice. Teachers are sharing what they're doing in the actual classrooms with their own students, which is really interesting. This includes using AI-powered language learning apps to model pronunciation of English words and phrases, to assess users' pronunciation of different phonetic sounds, and mimic English speakers' conversations. These apps can often offer interactive features that allow the learners to track progress, participate in challenges. So the gamification of this type of activity has become quite a motivator for in a lot of these apps. And one teacher has mentioned that the learning language apps have become invaluable in practice, which allows students to practice outside the classroom and receive personalized feedback that she can't provide in the actual classroom during the week because of a lack of time. The AI chatbots, of course, that have emerged can facilitate speaking practice now by acting as conversational partners, which has been a development that has emerged this year. And this is particularly helpful for learners who may feel anxious about speaking in front of others or lack opportunities to practice outside of class. The research that is becoming available has shown that using these personal voice assistants, like Alexa, for example, can promote meaningful interactions, support vocabulary acquisition, and improve language skills. However, it has been mentioned that it's important to acknowledge the limitations of AI in speaking practice. As I mentioned earlier, AI can sometimes struggle with the nuances of human conversation, not be able to provide the same level of feedback and support as a human teacher, fortunately. For example, some studies have found that AI chatbots can hinder the incorporation of diverse English use in ELT. So be careful with that. It can lead students to view English as a fixed subject with a single correct pronunciation model. I think this is the big danger, really. So it's crucial to use AI thoughtfully and intentionally. And if you are encouraging students to use it outside of class to practice their English, do try to provide or get them to use different accents when it comes to interacting with these AI tools, so that it complements and enhances rather than just replaces human interaction and instruction, and gives a variety of English. Right, when it comes to listening, although the research in AI and ELT often focuses on productive skills like speaking and writing, there are ways that teachers are using AI to support learners' listening skills and development. AI-powered dictation tools, for example. Although the research on AI and ELT often focuses on productive skills, these tools can be used to create interactive dictation exercises, so the learners can listen to audio recordings and transcribe what they hear, for example. This helps them develop their listening comprehension as well as their spelling and grammar. And some AI dictation schools can even provide automated feedback on accuracy. AI-generated transcripts is an important thing when it comes to listening. We now have the ability to produce transcripts automatically in all sorts of tools. They're available on automatically created on YouTube, for example. Teachers can use these transcripts to create a variety of listening activities. One of the things I think is really interesting is taking these transcripts that have errors in and working with the students, listening back and actually trying to correct the errors and understand why the AI tools created the errors, why they weren't able to create the actual things that the speaker said or wanted to say. That, I think, is an interesting way of developing student skills. Now, chatbots can be used to create interactive listening activities. You can now speak, as I said, to chatbots, and you can get them, as well as producing written text. They can actually speak themselves. So this can be a listening partner. Because of that, the chatbot can be programmed to ask questions, provide prompts, and offer feedback on the responses as well if you get the prompt right. What about reading? Well, teachers can use AI in various ways to support learners' reading skills development. As mentioned before, vocabulary enhancement is a big way in which teachers are actually using this. Teachers can use AI-powered games to make vocabulary learning more engaging and interactive. An example is using AI to contextualize vocabulary by creating a game where learners acquire new words through gameplay. AI-driven tools can easily create and generate glossaries of keywords in a text, providing learners with definitions. So learners can read a text and ask the AI to define some of the words that they don't understand, so they can better understand them. That can be really helpful for pre-teaching vocabulary before reading a challenging text, or supporting learners who need additional vocabulary support. Right. What about, there are lots of things that I'm skipping over here in my notes, but we don't have the time, unfortunately. What about writing, for example? Well, beyond error correction, which is an important aspect of how these tools can be used for writing, you can get the AI to read student writing and that students put in to chatbots and correct it, for example, or produce different variations. You could ask them, the AI, to produce a more formal or less formal text from the student writing, and the students in that way can understand better that aspect of written language. You can also get them to support writing process in all sorts of different ways. For example, generating ideas and structures. So it can be a useful tool given a writing subject. Students can use the AI tool to brainstorm ideas and develop structures for their writing. There are now very specific writing tools such as Magic Write on Canva that can provide students with writing prompts and generate ideas for writing tasks. AI can also facilitate collaborative writing. It can allow learners to work together on writing projects more effectively. And in this way, teachers are exploring AI tools to help develop collaborative writing skills, even when working individually. One of the things that I think is really interesting is the record that these tools provide students with. So the kind of history of how they're interacting with it. It can enhance writing practice, creating opportunities for learners to engage in all sorts of different types of writing practice that would otherwise be not possible because of the lack of time that teachers have in class. What about challenges and considerations? There are many of these. The over-reliance and potential complacency, I think, that learners may develop if they become overly reliant on these tools for writing. They may well end up not developing their own writing skills. So it's important for teachers, I think, to make sure that students have enough time to actually develop the writing skills and understand the process of writing rather than, just the product, which has always been a challenge for teachers, I think, to do with learners of English or of any language, really. And then, of course, another challenge that we mentioned before is the bias, and a teacher knowing how best to integrate these tools into class or in the language learning and teaching is of course of concern. Right. So running out of time, I'm going to kind of sum up, if I can, about what I've been talking about today. A quick look at the chat. Lots more being shared by Chris here. And personal and professional development, Chris says, won't reach everyone in the staff room. Schools must share the responsibility providing training in the use of Gen AI. Yeah, I think this is why, for me, the importance of joining and belonging to communities of practice is so valuable. Not just for this, but for any type of professional development. I think now connecting with other teachers outside of your staff room, outside of your town, city, country, I think provides a rich kind of experience to help with professional development that is, and you're enabled to achieve in other ways. Right. So what about next steps and emerging trends? It does definitely look like the interest in using AI for ELT is accelerating, and I can't see this becoming less in the year to come or the years to come. These tools provide and offer significant potential for language practice, and it's definitely it's changing how we think about language as well. And also, as I mentioned before, these tools are being used in the world of work, and that involves a lot of that involves the way English is being used for professional purposes. And so it's important that we don't ignore that, I think. The research into the use of AI in ELT is growing rapidly, which is great. But a lot of this research, unfortunately, is focused on the practicalities of using AI rather than critical engagement with risks and how to mitigate them. So hopefully that aspect will increase. There's definitely the need for more research on the impact of AI in ELT, especially on issues like ethics assessment and development of local and context-sensitive AI. One of the things I think is so crucial that has come up today is this idea of developing teachers' skills and learner skills and looking at AI literacy and looking at these AI tools with a critical eye. And ultimately, what has come out of the things that I've read is that the successful integration of AI and ELT will depend a lot on addressing the challenges that have been identified and ensuring that AI is used thoughtfully and responsibly to enhance the teaching and learning for all of us, all learners and all teachers. And that brings me to the end of today's Sunday Lunchtime show. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I would like to say that this is the last show that I'll be doing this year. Teachers Talk Radio will be taking a break over the holiday period, and we'll be back in the new year. In the meantime, though, there are lots of Teachers Talk Radio shows to listen to and a large number of recordings as well. So be sure to check them out at ttr.org. Bye for now.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Parentkind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school-parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents.
Are your teachers juggling multiple technology platforms and struggling to keep everything organised? Then Toddle might be the answer. Built by a team of ex-educators, Toddle offers an all-in-one solution for teachers that streamlines everything, from curriculum planning and assessments to communication and report cards. And the best part? Toddle comes inbuilt with an AI assistant that helps teachers save time and improve their practices. 85% of schools replaced 3 or more platforms when they brought in Toddle. Teachers using Toddle say that the platform helps them save up to 10 hours a week. That means more time for what really matters, supporting students and driving academic success. See how Toddle can support your school. Visit toddleapp.com.
Hey education changemakers, ready for something special? It's Bet Show's 40th anniversary and we're throwing a free celebration just for you. Join us at London Excel from January 22nd to 24th to connect, learn and be inspired. Picture this, 300 plus speakers who truly get it, 600 cutting-edge edtech companies and all the fresh ideas you need to make 2025 your best year yet. So why wait? Head to uk.betshow.com, grab your free ticket and come celebrate with your peers. Because this is for you. See you at Bet.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.